The End of the Marine. Part 1. Chapter 6. Part 2. The colonel was droning on, and I admit to losing focus. Passive collection? Ahead of schedule?
Captain Stern,
I snapped back.
you are rubbing the scar over your eye that marks the location of the wound that earned you a Purple Heart. Are you losing concentration? Is this the manifestation of a TBI? Do you need a moment?
I did not let him rattle me, even as he proved himself to be a gigantic a-hole. I smiled pleasantly and said, "No, sir. My apologies. I was just thinking about a quiz I have this afternoon on some vocabulary." Frosty was staring at me, trying to pick up the scar's location, and Green Eyes was looking at me quizzically like she was reassessing whatever determination she had made. I didn't care about either. I had not seen them at language training, and I suspected we were all going to different countries for our tours. So let them get an eyeful.
I am sure, but as I was saying, your language skills and innate intelligence make you excellent candidates to be exactly what you will be, serious graduate students. What you will also be are stalking horses for intelligence services to monitor you and hopefully make contact. And if we are lucky, they will try to turn you.
The DoD was sending young officers into target countries to give the spooks over there a chance to turn us into double agents? What kind of half-witted plan was this? What could anyone gain from this? Coastie asked the questions out loud that had only been rattling around in my brain.
Sir?
She asked in a deep female voice. Lauren Bacall came to mind. A blonde Lauren Bacall.
What is the point of sending us to allow spies to recruit us? That is contrary to all the yearly training they make us sit through.
I liked the cut of her jib already.
I was just about to get to that, Lieutenant Stackhouse. We want them to make contact, and we want them to think they are being successful in interesting you. We are trying to get a read on what their approaches are and what they think they can use to entice Americans to wittingly or unwittingly reveal secrets. You will show great willingness to collaborate with them academically and on cultural exchanges, and always outwardly appear that you take everything they tell you at face value. But no, in every location where you are going, some or all of the in-person contacts you make will be collection efforts. We want you to go along with them and periodically report your contacts and impressions, but you will only report to someone who approaches you and gives you a code word. These packages contain amplification and background that you will need, along with a code word formula that will be unique to each of you.
Code words and reports? Spies collecting on junior officers masquerading as students? The bad guys had to know that the Pentagon would not send credulous fools with brains full of secrets on independent duty. But that is probably why I would never be a colonel. I was not up to thinking these types of big thoughts.
This is a sensitive program. Perhaps not as sensitive as a special access program I notice a couple of you had been read into, but close. No one at the embassy or consulate to which you are assigned is read into this. You will not mention this program to anyone not in this space or who does not approach you with the code word and special credentials.
He produced a folding wallet with a white plastic credit card in a transparent sheath that had National Security Identification in blue block letters across the top above a picture of the colonel's head and shoulders in front of a blue background, the same color as the letters. Beneath his image in block letters was Quentin B. He handed the wallet to the Coastie, who looked at it and passed it off so we could all get a turn. When the wallet returned to him, he said,
In a moment, I will hand you your dossier, and you will retire to a corral to review your materials and memorize your code word formula. In the next couple of weeks, you will be approached by someone who will make contact with the code word and give instructions. Some number of failures to respond appropriately when approached will make you not fit for duty, and you will be returned to your services with a derogatory fitness report. But before that happens, you may opt out of this effort right now, without penalty. Any takers?
Me? Learn a code word and spend a few years studying poli-sci in Singapore? I was in. I gave the colonel a thumbs up. Coastie knitted her brows a little but shook her head. Frosty blurted, "I'm in," what sounded like a Harvard Yard accent. And Green Eyes just shrugged and looked down.
Excellent. Once you have your dossier, Senior Master Sergeant Washington will show you to your corrals. When you have read your materials, you are free to go. Any questions?
The colonel departed the room, carrying the folders, leaving the four of us sitting there. Frosty did not pass on the opportunity to take a shot at me with a look that I guess was disapproval, but might have been hostility. "What's the deal, Stern? Could not bother to wear your uniform to regulation?" Harvard Yard was thick on this one. He lifted his chin to point quickly at my lack of ribbons. I was in a little bit of a hurry. I did not even have time to frost my tips. There was a feminine ha and a cough from the Coastie as she turned to study the soundproofing. Frosty glared at me and appeared to be thinking hard of something to say when Senior Master Sergeant Washington came back into the room. "First Lieutenant O'Leary, will you come with me, sir?" Frosty's real name was O'Leary. He did not look much like a townie from the south side, but he did sound like one. There was a backstory there, I was sure, if I cared enough to inquire about it. But I did not. I was unlikely to see these officers again since they were heading to different countries, so it did not matter if I was personable. Don't get me wrong, I try to be a friend to all and pleasant as a rule. But some folks just make it difficult. Frosty O'Leary was one of those. As the two of them left, Coastie looked down the table at me. She had intelligent eyes, and she looked at me with a bit of amusement.
"So why aren't you wearing your ribbons? You don't see many O3s with a purple heart. That might have shut up O'Leary."
Oh, I'm sure nothing short of a straight left would shut his mouth. Since the UCMJ frowns on officer striking officers, I will just have to let him do his thing. There's no requirement for Marines to wear ribbons unless directed to do so, so I figure, why bother? Senior Master Sergeant Washington was back. "Lieutenant Junior Grade Wren." "This way, ma'am." Green Eyes picked up her cover and a little black backpack she was carrying and walked out. Lieutenant Stackhouse looked at me again.
"You seem familiar. Have we met?"
"No, Lieutenant, but I think we live in the same apartments. I have seen you going to the laundromat." She was searching her memory when Senior Master Sergeant Washington came back in. "Captain Stern, this way, please." The Guardian led me through a narrow passageway of the skiff towards a gap in the side hall with a narrow outward opening door that seemed about as wide as a voting booth. Senior Master Sergeant handed me my folder and said, "Please leave it with me at my desk near the exit when you depart." I thanked him, went into the booth, sat down in the chair, sliding myself under what looked to be a shelf. There was nothing else in the booth besides soundproof tile painted battleship gray. No computer, no electrical outlet, only an overhead light. I opened the file. Every page was marked Top Secret /SCI. Almost everything in it was information you would find online without looking too hard. There was a manila folder within the folder with my name on the tab and a sticky note on the outside that said, "Cleared for removal from skiff, personal information." The folder contained my acceptance letter to the National Political Science University, the address for the apartment I was to occupy, where I would get medical care, the visa for entry to Singapore, and a letter of introduction to the Marine attaché in Singapore. There was a country brief that looked like it was cribbed from Wikipedia. A local espionage assessment full of likely tos, probably wills, and often observeds. Of more interest was the guidance to be open to espionage approaches, to allow yourself to be cultivated, and to report contacts only when approached by someone with the code word. My code word formula was a movie title and a 2-digit number. Someone would approach me, strike up a conversation, and say something like, "I saw Gone with the Wind 35 times." I would respond with a different movie and the sum of that number. I could not bear to watch Mr. Billion more than 8 times. The contact would then give me the location and format for reporting. That guidance seemed vague, but they must have worked out the bugs over time this program had been in effect. There were some forms to sign about understanding my obligations and the necessity for secrecy and whatnot. I figured I had read enough, so I pulled my manila folder out and wandered back into the skiff. I found the senior master sergeant, who seemed surprised to see me. The tell was when he said, "Finished so soon?" "You know it, Senior Master Sergeant. As they say, you can tell it to the Marines, but you can't tell 'em much." He seemed even more nonplussed by this. "Very well, sir." And with that, I left the Pentagon and returned to the grind at Educational Services, LLC.